This will probably be the last of our series of videos on the book of Daniel. This is going to be the climax. This is going to be some great stuff. Now, Daniel, we already seen that Daniel can interpret dreams, that God rules the nations. If Daniel says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Now, we're in Daniel chapter 9. It's the first year of Darius, the son of Xerxes of the Mede. So we're talking about 538, 537 BC. We don't know the exact year. Sometime after Cyrus had defeated the Babylonians. And Daniel's having a quiet time. Let's see what happened in his quiet time. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood from scriptures, according to the word of the Lord given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last for 70 years. So he's reading Jeremiah, either chapter 24, maybe 29. In both cases, it says the time of the captivity would be 70 years. Now, Daniel's been in captivity since 605 BC. Around 537, around 68 years later, he's saying 7 years. He's saying, all right, come on, let's go. And he's very bold with God. He says, come and save like you said you would. It's a great prayer. We don't have time to go into the prayer. But in this prayer, basically, he confesses that he has sinned. Which, technically, it wasn't him that sinned. It was the people that sinned. I appreciate the humility of Daniel. So anyway, let's read the end of that prayer and get to the what happens as far as the prophecy. While I was speaking and praying, verse 20, confessing my sin and the sin of my people, Israel, and making request of the Lord my God for his holy hill, while I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, is that awesome or what? A word went out which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore consider the word and understand the vision. 70 sevens are decreed for your people in your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Know and understand this, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. Now, if there ever was a messianic prophecy, we've got one here. It talks about the anointed one. Well, the Hebrew word is Messiah. It says the anointed one will come. The Messiah will come to Jerusalem after 70 sevens. From the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, 70 sevens. He's going to come in. He's going to put an end to wickedness, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up a vision of prophecy, and be anointed as the most holy one. Now, what is this decree? Was there ever a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem? Well, we can go to Ezra. In Ezra chapter 1, we have the decree of Cyrus not to rebuild Jerusalem, but to go back and rebuild the temple. Later on in Ezra, we have the decree of Darius to go back and, build the temple. And they finally did in 516 BC. But in neither case did they say to rebuild the walls of the city. It was Artaxerxes. This is Ezra chapter 6, in which Artaxerxes says, go back and rebuild Jerusalem. And they did. We know that because Nehemiah did, and the walls got built. The year is 458 BC. It's the 7th year of Artaxerxes. Now, 70 times 7 is 490. And 458 minus 490 minus 32. 32 AD. Well, no, not 32 AD. Because there is no year 0. The calendar goes from 1 BC to 1 AD. So in other words, the prophecy involves the Messiah coming to Jerusalem in 33 AD. Oh, okay. Hopefully you're getting it. Now, actually, if you read the prophecy more specifically, it says 7 sevens and 62 sevens, which means 69 sevens. In other words, the prophecy is that sometime during the 70th week, sometime between 26 BC and 33 BC. The fact is, probably, historians would say that Jesus was executed in 30 AD, right in the middle of the 70th week. You see what's going on here? Daniel, who prophesied the 4 kingdoms and Domitian and Antiochus Epiphanes, prophesied the time and the place that Jesus of Nazareth came and offered his life as a sacrifice. Does that convince you the Bible is the inspired word of God? Does that convince you that Jesus is no afterthought? This is great stuff, folks. Then in the last part of chapter 9, it's a prophecy about the abomination of desolation. It's a prophecy about the events of 70 AD. And in Matthew 25, Jesus said, like Daniel said, I am saying as well, when the cities surround the city, leave there, it's going to be destroyed. Now, Daniel 10 and 11, that's the most intense vision of the whole book. We don't have time to get into it. Daniel has this dream, and he's passing out for 3 days, and he's coming back, and he's being raised up. It's very intense. Now, it's a prophecy of the kings of the north and the kings of the south. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first read this, I thought, okay, whatever. Now, I'll tell you who the kings of the south are. They are Ptolemy and his successors. The kings of the north are Seleucus and his successors. The reason I know that is because I can read in a history book. In fact, I suggest a book by Pfeiffer called Between the Testaments, which kind of describes, it's well known, Herodotus and others, and even Josephus and others record this time frame. All right? And anyway, these give time, place, person, queen, king, wars, all this stuff. Incredibly detailed picture of the battles between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies that occurred between around, 315 BC to around to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, the important part of this vision is when Antiochus Epiphanes comes on the stage. This happens in verse 29. He talks about ships of the western coastlands. Remember I mentioned that Antiochus went to Egypt to try to conquer the Ptolemies, but Rome came and rescued Egypt. So he was ticked off, man. He was mad. So he came back and he blamed the Jews. And what he did, as it says here, he abolished the daily sacrifice. He desecrated the temple. He set up the abomination, the statue with his face on it in the Holy of Holies. And many people compromised, as it says. Some were willing to do what he said, but others were not. He used deceit and threats. Verse 33. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. And this is what happened. We have records of this. You can read it in 1 Maccabees about the people who tried to rise up and the traitors turned them in and they were killed. Will receive help and many who are not sincere will join them, which is what happened, by the way. Some of the wise will stumble so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end. For it will still come at the appointed time. And we know what happened. Jacob Maccabees and Jonathan Maccabees raised in revolt, and finally they kicked him out. And the wise ruled. In fact, this led to a time of greatness for the Jews, greater than anything since the time of David. Believe it or not, from that time for about 80 years, the Jews had their own nation right there in Palestine. It was a time of great glory. Because God purified his people, they did great. And this persecution turned out for their good. Anyway, and then in the last part of Daniel 11, there's a prophecy of the final destruction of the Greek emperors. There's the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, which involves Mark Antony and Cleopatra. I don't have time for that. Now, what Daniel does is what the book of Revelation does here. Revelation primarily concerns visions of the near future, as it says right there in Revelation 1:1. It concerns the persecutions of Rome against the church. But in Revelation 21 and 22, it fast forwards to the time of the end. Same with Daniel. Visions concerning these persecutions, especially under Antiochus Epiphanes. But then in Daniel chapter 12, roll forward the tape to the time of the end. Let's read about the time of the final resurrection at the end of time. Starting in verse 2. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, those who lead men into righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. According to Daniel, there's going to be a final resurrection. multitudes will rise, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Others will shine like the stars forever and ever. I don't know about you. I want to be one of those wise who are loyal to God, who are faithful to God, who hear his voice, who do not give in to the temptation of the world, who are like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I believe in the final resurrection. Let me tell you why I believe in the final resurrection. The reason I believe in it is because Daniel said so. This is the same Daniel said there'll be 4 kingdoms. The fourth will be stronger than the others, but it'll be divided kingdom, one strong, one brittle. The same Daniel said the 11th emperor of Rome will attack the saints, will try to change the set times, will speak boastfully and try to change the set laws. And that's exactly what happened. And then Daniel said there's going to be a prominent horned goat who's going to destroy the 2-horned ram. And when he dies, he's going to have 4 succeeding dynasties and then a 5th. And that 5th will conquer to the south and to the east in the promised land. And from that will come a terrible ruler who will desecrate the temple. Exactly what happens. And Daniel said the desecration will last for 2,300 evenings and mornings. And that is exactly what happened. This is the same Daniel who said during the 70th week after the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, that was not made until almost 100 years after he died, that the Messiah would come, and the Messiah came. All these fulfillments are a matter of history. We have one prophecy which has not happened yet, but I believe it. I believe it's going to happen. I believe that if I live a righteous and wise life, I'll be raised from the dead, and so will you. And it says here, there's a great evangelism passage. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. You know, there's plenty of room up there. We can lead as many as we want to righteousness because God rules the nations. Do not fear. Thank you very much. Oh, I hope it worked. Oh, I hope it worked.